Hi, everyone, and welcome to Voices Across Borders, brought to you by Multicultural Talent Network. I'm Mina Kim Mok. In this podcast, we go beyond the resume to share real stories from professionals navigating life and career across borders. You will also hear from researchers as well as solo episodes where I dive into key topics shaping the global professionals. I hope you will find insight, connection, and maybe even a little encouragement along the way. Today's guest is Carlos Kuriyama. Carlos is the director of the Policy Support Unit at APEC, the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation based in Singapore. That unit is essentially the research and analytical brain of one of the most important economic forums on the planet, spanning 21 economies. Before joining APEC, he was in Lima advising Peru's Deputy Minister of Foreign Trade and Tourism, where he helped shape Peru's entire trade strategy with Asia. He also taught economics and Asian studies at universities in Peru, so the passion for sharing knowledge has always been part of who he is. He is one of the hardest working, most trustworthy people I've ever met, and someone who genuinely deeply cares about the well-being of people, not just in his region, but across humanity. Carlos, thank you for being my guest today. It is so good to have you here. I'd like to start with something that probably on a lot of people's mind right now. The global political climate feels very complex. Trade tensions, shifting alliances, growing uncertainty, and political landscape have always shifted throughout history, but it's hard not to feel like we are living through one of those moments right now. And yet your work is about fostering meaningful policy research and cooperation across 21 very different economies. So how challenging has it been to carry out your work and your mission in an environment like this, or does it not feel all that different from before? And honestly, how are you holding up?
Hi, Mina. Thanks so much for the invitation. It's important to stress the fact that geopolitical tensions have always existed and they have been a driver of history. But the thing is that now we are currently experiencing changes that make things more challenging for everyone. So, in the case of international organizations like APEC, we are noticing changes. There's a sort of a more multipolar order. We are also witnessing how the businesses are switching strategies. They are building now more resilient supply chains. They are moving the business model from a just in time to a just in case model. We are also looking at new areas where the governments are competing hard, like artificial intelligence, essential
Mm.
goods, critical minerals, among others. So I would say in this context, getting consensus is not an easy thing. Nowadays, among APEC members, we can see many different views, but it's still possible to reach consensus. The advantage is that APEC is a non-binding fora, and that helps us to be a sort of an incubator of ideas to explore creative ways to seek solutions to existing challenges. In my case, I lead the unit in charge of all the evidence based research and policy analysis. We provide evidence and policy recommendation to APEC members, and the purpose is to help them to improve in their deliberation process, to improve the quality of their deliberations and decision making process. And I think this is a strong motivation for all of us working in APEC, including myself.
Do you think we can reach consensus?
I think it's still doable, it's possible. What we have to do is to be creative and make sure that how we do things, it's not gonna be felt as sensitive by governments. And
Mm.
actually, there are ways that we can do that.
How do you do that? Is it more discussions, more meetings?
We have to understand the concerns of all
Mm-hmm.
parties. And then we start finding out some commonalities,
Mm.
some issues that everyone is interested in. In that way, it's possible to reach
Mm-hmm.
consensus.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I want to shift gears a little bit for next question. I'd like to focus on just you as a person, not just a title. So let's
Yeah.
go back. You grew up in Peru, went to undergrads, built a career there, and at some point you made the decision to study abroad in the States. So what
Mhm.
was the main reason behind the decision and what were you looking for?
Well, to understand that, I think it would be good for me to talk a little bit about my background. So, I think I had it very clear from the beginning that it was very important for me to find a way to be competitive, to get a comparative advantage in my professional career. So I came from a middle class family in Peru who was hit very hard by the economic crisis in 1980s in the early 1990s. I went to a public high school as my parents didn't have enough resources to send me to a private school. And I knew the only way to have a chance in life was to study hard and to attempt going to a top school. I
Mhm.
wanted to study economics. I was able to be admitted in the top ranked university in economics in Peru, Universidad del Pacífico. And this university helped me a lot because it's a private university, but they only charge my family with 25% of the tuition and fees with the condition that I could keep a good academic performance, which I did. So that helped me to get a job in one of the university research centers. And it was when I was working in that university research center that I noticed that those professionals that were getting the best opportunities were those that had pursued graduate studies overseas, that those that came back with masters or PhD degrees,
Mm.
particularly from the US or from European schools. And so I also at that time noticed that as an economist, I could not rely on just economic tools, and I had to complement my undergrad degree with further studies in other disciplines that could help me to understand better the world.
Mhm.
That's why I decided to pursue graduate studies in international affairs with a strong component in political science. So at that time, I'm telling you, this is about the early 2000s. There was not much information on the internet, but
Right.
by speaking with some people, some older colleagues, I decided to write to some universities in the US and UK to send me information about graduate programs on international affairs. And the one that really caught my eye was the School of International and Public Affairs in Columbia University, SIPA. And so
Right.
I applied for it. And I was lucky to be accepted in SIPA, to get a scholarship as well from the Inter American Development Bank, because I
Mm.
had no resources to pay for my grad studies in SIPA. And yeah, I think my grad studies at SIPA gave me a much better understanding of the world. I think it opened the world to me in terms of opportunities, really. Many doors that I thought were never going to open for me, they open up because I had a master's degree from SIPA, from Columbia University.
When did you know you liked to study economics?
Oh, that was long time ago. That was in the, I would say, late 80s, early 90s, because in Peru we were facing probably one of the worst economic crises in history, hyperinflation,
Oh, I see. Okay.
high unemployment levels. I was looking around and everything was chaotic. And I wanted to solve that, to contribute to a solution. And I said, yes, I would like to
Mm.
study economics. I could hear every day what economists were saying about the crisis and how this should be resolved. And I like that. And that's how I decided to study economics.
Was it before you went to college in Peru?
I think, in my last year of primary school, and then during secondary school, I was already convinced that economics was what I wanted to study.
Oh, wow. That's very impressive
Yeah.
at
But
that
it's
early
because of
age.
the environment in Peru. So,
Hmm.
massive economic crisis, and I have a problem solving approach to things. And I guess that motivated me to study economics.
We are seeing a shift in how people think about global cooperation. Some
Uh-huh.
believes like countries should become much more self-sufficient. But I think our world is so interconnected that we'll always need to work together in some way. And that's
Uh-huh.
why I believe that organization like APAC remains so important. So for someone who is inspired by your work and wants to build a career at APAC or a similar international organization, what advice would you give them? And what skills or experience help someone succeed in that environment?
I think it's important in early careers to start learning as much as we can, to be more a sort of a generalist than a specialist. Because
Mm,
when we are young, the companies are not gonna believe that we are specialists. We need to learn a lot, and a lot of the things are learned while we are doing our jobs. It's a lot of on-the-job training. When it comes to working in any international organizations, we know that governments are the main stakeholders, the one who fund the operation. So in this sense, I think having previous experience in government, in the public sector helps a
mm,
lot. In my view, that increases anyone's chance to get a job in an international organization. That's my view, and this is what actually happened to me. I was in the government before I came to APEC.
right.
I think it's also very important to be proficient in different languages. That also helps a lot. In my case, I can speak English, Spanish, Portuguese. I'm a native Spanish speaker, but being fluent in English actually was what it really helped me to get my current job and also my previous jobs. I think it's important to be open minded with the capacity to adjust to different situations and also to hear from others. The work atmosphere in any international organization is multicultural. And it's
Mm-hmm.
important to know how to navigate this multicultural aspect. As a manager, for example, I need to pay attention on how I communicate to others, and I have to take into account the cultural background of the person because if I want my team to do their best, I know that I have to communicate differently to every person. A lot of that is related to the cultural background. Some people
Right.
prefer that I am more straightforward, others prefer that I'm not. So that's an example. Then I think another important skill is to be familiar with international and public affairs. So we need to be reading a lot of news, publications on a articles covering a wide range of topics and read from different sources, different views across the political spectrum. So that gives you an advantage. Then it's important to be patient as well because to build a career in international organizations take time.
Yep. Yes, I can see that. Being patient and being flexible are important. Then how did you end up joining APAC? I know you worked at Peruvian government for a while. And did you apply for APAC positions?
In international organizations, sometimes governments send secondees, but it was not my case. I was hired directly by the APEC Secretariat, and I was working back in 2008 in the Peru Ministry of Foreign Trade and Tourism. And I was working in my computer, and I got an email from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Peru and they were announcing that the APEC Secretariat in Singapore
Mm-hmm.
was recruiting professionals for a new unit. And they were looking for professionals with knowledge in economics and public policy and,
Mm.
and professionals with government experience. So I decided to apply for it. So I looked at information related to this new unit. I read the job advertisement and I said, yes, I can do this job. So I decided to apply. I went through 2 rounds of interviews and I got the job. I
Mm.
think in retrospective, looking back, I think my journey followed a logical sequence in which every new experience helped me to improve my professional profile and get new professional opportunities. I was working in academia that helped me to go to the US to pursue my master's. Then
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Peru and I went to the government. And then those experiences helped me altogether to get this job in APEC.
What has been the most challenging part of this career path for you? And on the flip side, what has been the most rewarding?
Yeah, when we think about challenges, I think there are three big challenges. I think the number one is that working in an international organization, well, depending on your position, a lot of travel could be involved. And that means spending a lot of time away from, in my case, from my wife, my son,
Mm-hmm.
close friends, that stuff. Then the other challenge is that I'm living very far away from where my elderly parents live, from where other relatives live. In Singapore, it's basically me, my wife, my son, and my mother-in-law. But other relatives, they live in other countries,
Mm-hmm.
very far away. So that's challenging. And the other thing that is challenging is that we have to be extremely patient because it takes time to reap the benefits of your hard work. That's
Right.
something that we need to take into account.
Absolutely.
And I would say the most rewarding thing is, in my view, to be able to support many different governments with ideas, policy recommendations for their consideration. Knowing later that all these inputs were useful for them, that makes it very rewarding.
Thanks so much for sharing that as well. So, forget the title for a moment. So, as Carlos, as a person, as a
Yeah.
husband, as a father, and after everything you've experienced and heard and seen, what gives you hope for the next generation? And what kind of future do you hope will leave them?
My hope is to see a future where respect, tolerance, and common sense prevails. I'm very idealist in that sense. My concern is that in recent years we are noticing polarization. This is getting more common all over the world, and this is not good. I do really care a lot about the human side. I think we all have to find a way to evolve by being better persons, and it's important for me as a manager, for example, to instill good values, to lead by example, to encourage the next generation to be a good person. So I think it's important to be a good professional, but it's even more important to be a good person.
Right.
I think the means to achieve any end, any objective, do really matter. The means, the forms, it matters. And that's what people need to pay attention to. And yeah, hopefully I will be in a capacity, to inspire to all my colleagues that work with me. And it's important to think not just on their professional growth, but also on their personal growth as well.
I'm sure you are doing an amazing job. Thank you, Carlos. This has been such a genuine, inspiring conversation as always. And thank you for your time, your honesty, and everything you do. I know the work, especially these days, isn't always easy, but the world is better because people like you are doing it. Because I've known you for a long time. I really mean it. So thank you.
You're welcome, Mina. Thanks so much for having me.
If you're interested in reaching out to us, you can contact us at Multicultural Talent Networks or Mina Kim Mok, MINAKIMMOK, through LinkedIn. Thank you so much for listening.